Hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us again today, which is now our third call as a global group of delegates to the JCoR Digital Delegation Program for the 2025 High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. And I expect I have probably been on a call with each of you by this time, but just to be certain, I will introduce myself again briefly by simply saying my name is Teresa Blumenstein, and I have the privilege to be the coordinator of the Justice Coalition of Religious, which brings together the mission and the efforts for justice, peace, and the integrity of creation of a group of 23 NGOs representing about 200 congregations of Catholic sisters, brothers, and priests around the world. And so I'm very excited to be able to be part of this process with all of you as we prepare for the major progress review forum for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which happens every year, but will happen again this year in the month of July. And thus far, if we recall our first two global gatherings, we took some time together to first understand the reason for the engagement of religious congregations in a space like the United Nations that may seem very political and may seem not to be a space for faith or for spiritual leadership. But in that first call, we in fact discussed the many ways in which our mission and the ideals and ultimate mission of the United Nations have a lot of points of alignment. And in our second call together, we then spoke more specifically about the forum that we are preparing for. We learned about how the forum is organized, and more importantly, we learned about the many different pathways or opportunities that we have as members of civil society to be active participants in that forum. And because we have those opportunities, that is what brings us together to form a united delegation that can join this process and can add our voices to the global narrative that is being told about the reality in your individual countries and about the reality of our world as a whole. So you may recall that I handed to you a series of assignments or independent activities to pursue between our last call in February and this call today. And those included attempting to make some contact with a civil society network in your own country that is involved in the work of monitoring progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals. Another assignment was for those of you who are in the Asia Pacific region, you have already completed the regional forum for sustainable development for your region. All of the other regions are coming up, one of them starting today, and the others are at other times in this coming month. So we hope that some of you in the Asia Pacific region were able to follow some of those proceedings online, and perhaps you will have something to share from that experience today. And another task that we talked about last time was trying to find a way of completing the form to join the country team that will report on behalf of civil society from your country in response to the presentation that your government will make in July. You might recall that we said each one of your countries who is reporting this year will have about 10 to 15 minutes to give their progress report before the rest of the UN community. And then immediately after that, members of civil society have a very short opportunity to make a response to that presentation. And so we are very much encouraging all of you to be part of that civil society team from your country that will be involved in making that response, which is really one of the most direct and exciting ways that you can communicate directly with your government during this forum. So we will be checking in today on your progress toward all of those tasks or activities that we discussed before. And then we will also take a look forward to a couple upcoming activities that we will undertake as a group. And I will explain those more when we arrive at them. But before we go any further today, let us begin in the way we usually do with a very brief prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, we are your beloved. Even in our unfinished state, you take delight in what we are and in what we will become.
Oh, man, Aku baik rebus kan, rebus saya mengbit kacang-kacang, produk inti kontainer.
Help us to claim for our own your gentle leadership in our lives. Help us to know that you are always hoping for more for us and from us, for our nations and from our nations, for our planet and from our planet. Give us the strength and peace of heart to be filled with your power. Give us the courage to use that power to establish justice. Give us faith in resurrection so that we may be patient and persistent in our journey toward your reign. Amen.
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 Okay, so again, the main purpose of our time together today will be to check in to see how all of your efforts to prepare for the forum have been progressing over the last month and a half. So we will first hear from one another about our experiences thus far in attempting to make contact with a civil society network that is monitoring SDG progress in your country. We will hear about your experience attempting to join the VNR team, the Voluntary National Review team, that will respond to your government's SDG progress report. And we will also hear about anyone from the Asia Pacific region who had the opportunity to follow some of their regional forum. We will invite them to share their experience and whatever they are taking away from that experience. And then finally, we will talk about 2 future activities and talk about how to prepare for them. which is looking ahead to how do we study and reflect on the SDG progress reports that were submitted by our fellow members of civil society. Where can we find them and how do we reflect on them? And then secondly, we will start to think all the way ahead to kind of our capstone activity at the very end of the program, which is the JCoR SDG Labs. And I will speak more about that when we get there. So our first topic for checking in is to ask about everyone's experience in the attempt to make contact with their civil society networks in their own countries. And you may recall that these slides were shared with you after the last call. They are something of a directory that provides links and, in some cases, specific points of contact for you with an organization or a network that is in your own country and has done some work either monitoring or reporting on the SDGs. And in our last call, we said that one approach that might be helpful to reaching out to them would be simply to begin by introducing yourself, which could just simply include your name and your congregation, where it is that you are serving in ministry, and perhaps some of the issues or the SDGs on which you are working most directly in your ministry. And then simply to ask, what is this network doing in preparation for this year's high-level political forum? Will there be a report that is prepared? Is there a meeting or a gathering that is happening where people will share experiences? What kind of preparations are happening this year? And if you were to find out that they were preparing a report, perhaps you could ask if there's still an opportunity, if there is a way for you to contribute to that report or to somehow be involved in its creation. And so this is the first point of pause when I will hand the microphones over to all of you and quiet my own. And be interested to hear from those of you who have attempted to make this contact with your own national network, to hear how it has been for you. Were you able to make contact? Did you hear back from the group that you were trying to contact? Did anyone find out that there are activities that they are able to join in their country? Would be very excited and interested to hear how your experience has been. So I'm going to also stop sharing my screen so that we can all see each other better. And if anyone has an experience to share, I invite you to raise your hand, which you could do if your camera is on, you can simply wave, or if your camera is not on, you can use the raise hand button, which may appear on its own at the bottom of your screen with the little picture of a hand, or you may need to go into a button called Reactions. And then within that, you would find the raise hand button. So is there anyone who is able to share an experience of attempting to contact a civil society network in your region? Yes, Sister Rita, please go ahead.
Thank you, Teresa, and hello, members. I actually took the assignment very seriously and I tried to make contact. It's actually the first time having sisters from Nigeria to be part of this. So it was difficult for me because from the ones that you showed on the slide, one or two of them that I tried to get in touch, you need to pay specific amount of money to be a member. And the money is not just small amount of money. It's not just small, it's quite big. But apart from that, there were other requirements, and I'm asking myself, why do we need to pay for that? It is to give report. Then others, you will click, and what you will see, no new member is admitted. So I did that, and I think what I didn't do, Teresa, was to get back to you and ask if I could get some contact of those who have given report before. But I am not giving up because there are a lot of issues that I would like to share. As I said, the first time I said the issue of kidnapping in Nigeria, and the target is more on priests and the religious. Over 100 priests have been killed or kidnapped within, and it's just on daily basis now. It's almost like every week you will hear this person has been kidnapped because you pay ransom, and the ransom is not. So that has been my attempt. I don't want to give in to the frustration of not being allowed, but I do know that this month that I will continue to search until I get a group that will allow me to participate with them. Thank you.
Wow, Rita, that is an amazing, I am so delighted to hear about your persistence. And in fact, that is the first time I have heard that any of the networks were kind of charging a membership fee. That is something new for me. So that is a good point of education. And I will have to follow up with you to find out which of those networks they were, so that I can kind of make a note of that for our records for the future. Because, you know, especially if you're saying it's not a nominal fee, it's not a small fee, that probably will not be an option for almost any congregation. So that's very, very good information. And I also applaud your determination to continue the search until you find someone who is more open and interested in the broadest possible participation, because I would expect that that there is some such network, and it is a matter of finding them. And you know, I think you're correct in your next thought in terms of your strategy in looking at the other civil society organizations or institutions who have submitted contributions before, and to ask them who else they know, how did they get organized. I think that's a very smart approach. And in a way, we will begin to look at some of that toward the end of our session today. So we will return to that. But thank you very much for sharing that experience and that insight. And we will follow up and work together to try to find a way around the obstacles and ultimately get there. And I will try to be alongside you in your determination. I also see the hand of Ida. Please go ahead, Ida.
Sí, voy a hablar en español.
Yes, I'm going to speak in Spanish. I have tried to get in touch with the 3 networks here in South Africa, but none of them has answered me. I sent you an email about that, Teresa. I've also tried to connect with different religious groups that are working in JPIC, but none of them answered either. So I'm all alone here, and I was not able to do anything. But I've tried. I've really tried. I've done everything possible to do my best. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida. Yes, and I will say the reason we use in our program in previous years, we did not have a call at the end of March. We waited until later in April, and this was a common difficulty that many people encountered. And so I thought, oh, for this year, let us have a time we meet in the middle of this task, so that we can kind of connect and assess what different challenges people are meeting and maybe think together about how we might overcome them. So I also want to say, it's not unusual, unfortunately. It is not unusual to encounter either a very long delay in hearing back from the network when you make communication, or in many cases, maybe a network existed in the past and they came together just for 1 year in the HLPF, and then they kind of dissolve and go their separate ways after that. And so there's no one really monitoring the communication that's coming in for that network. And so it definitely requires some search. And I admire that you're very creative in reaching out also to different organizations and JPIC connected groups within the country as well. That was a good strategy. But it sounds like it still has not gotten you where you want to be. So I think a good point would be, and I don't think she is on the call today, but Sister Biddy Rose, who is with the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, she was part of our program last year, because, as you may know, the government of South Africa was scheduled to report last year, and then kind of at the last minute, they said, wait, never mind, we are delaying, we are going to defer to next year. So so she went through the whole program last year and made the same effort that you are making now. And I think she is joining us at least some of the sessions again this year, because she wants to see the ultimate report from the government at the end of the road. But it might be good, and I will try to directly connect the two of you and anyone else that we have here from South Africa, just to see if anyone has found any group or any strategy that has brought them at least a response. And if not, at least you will have a conversation among yourselves, so you will not feel alone in your exploration, and maybe someone has had some success and they can share the secret, the way in. But thank you for your persistence also, Ida. Anyone else have an experience to share, either a difficulty or a success in making contact with a civil society network that is monitoring SDGs in your country? Yes, please, Barnabas, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. So I am Barnabas Dudia, CMF from Nigeria. Practically, I would say I was able to to have a privileged encounter with a group called World Council for Health Nigeria, where they were discussing methods of increasing and improving on the health sector in the country. They are a group of individuals, okay, not government organized group, but a group of individual health practitioners who are, profounding ways of improving the health of the average Nigerians. So they are actually against, some of these medicines that are promoted by big pharmaceutical industries and the rest of them, and they are proponents of this locally made medicine that helps to improve the health of the average Nigerian, because they feel that most of these medicines that are promoted by big companies and the rest of them, they have adverse effects on the well-being, on the general well-being, health well-being of the Nigerians. And also because efforts have been made to scrutinize some of these medicines that have been promoted, particularly vaccines. And the latest one was one that was said to be promoted under the umbrella of malaria vaccine. Okay, that's said to be distributed in one of the states, about some of the states, Bayelsa, and some states in the north, in the northern part of Nigeria. So one of the states in the south, and it is said to be spreading. And they try to reach out to some of these people, okay, who are a kind of at the forefront promoting these vaccines, and they were not giving headways. They were not coming up. And they've discovered that after thoroughgoing inquiry, they seem not to be giving, they are not forthcoming with the truths, the veracity of how this medicine really improves the health of the average Nigerian. It appears that some of these individuals who are promoting it are doing it at the expense of the health of the people, and then to the advantage of their pockets. So largely speaking, aside this encounter I had with this group, there is practically no other place, no other group I've been able to encounter. I currently carry out my ministry in the southwest region of Nigeria, okay? But this is just the effort I've been able to, the little progress I've been able to achieve thus far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barnabas. And since you and Sister Rita were both searching for networks in Nigeria, did you have a similar experience to her? She mentioned that some of the groups were charging money, and the others were not accepting new members. Did you find similar barriers?
To be honest, I must acknowledge that little effort, the little effort I put in to look out for groups of this kind did not yield fruit. Number one, two basic reasons. Number one, maybe because I've not asked the right persons the right questions, because the few individuals I try to inquire from, seem to be, sometimes, after all, they say information is a currency, as some people used to say it, sometimes some people withhold, basic information that will lead to, helping you find out information about certain things. But some persons feel that there are some information that should not be revealed to certain people. I wonder why, but these groups seem to be these civil society groups, in the Nigerian system, seem to be working very closely with the government, and it's more like confidential in their approach towards certain things. So no matter how hard you try, there seems to be little breakthrough. But maybe I've not tried enough, but for now, I've not been able to achieve breakthrough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that sharing. And you bring another good point for us all to remember in our attempts to connect with whether it's an NGO or with a network of NGOs in our country. That is something we mentioned briefly in our last call was that, of course, I think this is true in many countries, maybe all countries, that it is fairly common for some organizations, though they are officially designated as non-governmental, they will in fact have something of a quiet partnership or some
With
kind
the-
of quiet support from government in a way that they are not really so independent. And so sometimes, you know, we have to be careful in assessing that when we make contact with a new group, and
Very
just
well.
to be aware that it is a possibility that even when an organization declares or names itself to be separate from government, sometimes there are quiet connections or invisible connections. And you can use your own good judgment to recognize when, you know, you're receiving information that seems to be maybe exactly what you would hear from government, with no challenge whatsoever of anything coming from the government. That is a good reason to dig deeper or to look more closely.
Very well.
And just to see if there are some connections there. So that's a good reminder for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that has an experience they would like to share from trying to make contact? Yes, Cesar?
Good morning, Teresa. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I've checked the two links that you sent from Guatemala. One is non-existing, and the other one, the last post is dates back to October 2024. So I don't know if they are active, but because they are not publishing anything. So that's the two links that I was provided with, and that was all.
Okay, thank you, Cesar. And yeah, it's hard to know when they stop making posts on social media. It's hard to know sometimes if they are still active. And I would say in that case, the one that was posting until October 2024, it may be worth attempting to write to them, either social media or whatever contact information you have, and just to follow up, because in the world of organizing in this way, sometimes it is not so unusual for a group to go several months without making a change to their website or a change to their social media feed. Sometimes there are these large gaps, and they are in fact still active, but they are not changing their online presence very frequently. So it's possible that they are still active. So it may be worth sending another message to them, just to attempt to make a connection. But then it sounds like in case they are completely finished as a group, it may be worth trying to do some more research about other possible groups that may be more active in this moment. And perhaps we can both do some research. I can return to some of the usual places that I look to find networks, and maybe you can also do some independent research, and we will see if we can find another option, and one that is truly active and hoping to be participating in this year's forum. But thank you for the update, and I will also follow up with you to get the name of the one that is completely inactive, so that we can remove that one from our list also. I see the hand of Jane. Please go ahead, Jane.
Thank you, Teresa, and good morning. We have two sisters here also on the call from India, and India is one of the VNR countries. We have not yet contacted or connected with NGOs or civil society about HLPF. We only signed for the NGOs of VNR. NGOs VNR stakeholder engagement. We just registered last week. What can we expect from that or after that, Teresa? With that registration we did, what comes after that?
Great
Or
question.
how do we proceed? Yeah.
Yes. And I will, just before I answer that, I just want to see if there was anybody else that wanted to speak about the first task of contacting the civil society network. And then I promise, Jane, I will come back to that because that is a great question. Was there anyone else that had attempted to contact a civil society network in their country that wanted to share if they had any success or difficulty? I don't see any hands. So Jane, your timing is perfect. In fact, this is the perfect transition to the next subject on which we wanted to check in today, which is, again, that you are all encouraged to attempt to join the VNR, or Voluntary National Review team, that will craft the input from civil society in response to your government's report at this year's forum. And again, as a reminder, this team is really the only group of individuals who have the opportunity to offer brief remarks on the situation in their country, and also to ask questions of their government representatives during the forum itself in the main plenary session. It is really the most direct way of being a part of the forum, which is why we are so emphatic when encouraging you to join this team, which you can do from anywhere, and you do not need to have a plan to be coming to New York for the forum itself. You can still contribute to the messages that will be delivered during the forum by joining this team. And these statements from civil society are shared immediately after each government makes their presentation in the forum. So there's kind of a direct response that is offered. So to return to Jane's question, some of you who have already filled out the form that we showed you last time to join the team for your country. Perhaps some of you have already been contacted by the organizers. I'm not sure if they have begun their process of kind of convening people and bringing them together yet. I don't think that they have started because they are still collecting responses. There is still time to join this team. And so I think they will probably wait until either, well, maybe the next few days, actually, I suspect, is when they will close that form. And at that point, I think that is when those who have already completed the form can expect to be contacted by some member of what will be called the major groups and other stakeholders. And I'm sorry that that phrase is very clunky, is very unwieldy and is not a name that is very memorable either. But the group that organizes this whole event is the major groups and other stakeholders. And someone would be contacting you at the email address that you provided when you submitted the form. And what the process will look like from there is they will probably be connecting you with everyone else from your country who also submitted that form and said, yes, I would like to join the team for Nigeria, or I would like to join the team for the Philippines, or I would like to join the team for India or South Africa. And so each country will kind of be convened separately. And I believe that most of the work is accomplished by written communication. And after that, some groups choose to have meetings. So depending on who the participants are, they may say it would be really helpful if we could have a video call to discuss the different points that we want to emphasize. Because again, this opportunity to speak is just 2 minutes in length. It's quite short. And so you will need to have some discussion with the other members of the team from your country about what are the most important things that you need to say, what kind of challenges or critiques are the most important to present after your government finishes their presentation. And so that will require some discussion. So some of it may be in writing, some of it may be by call, and that will depend country by country, what that group of individuals decides is the best way of coming together for them. At this point, I do not expect that any of you would have received that message from the organizers. I do think they are still waiting to get more responses before they kind of convene the groups country by country. So if you submitted the form and you have not heard anything yet, I would not be concerned about that at this time. However, I would expect to hear from them in the next 2 weeks. So if in 2 weeks from today, you still have not heard anything, so maybe you can kind of keep in mind that that will be, I think, Monday of Holy Week, 2 weeks from today. So have in your mind when it comes to Holy Week, if you have not yet heard anything from the major groups and other stakeholders, I think at that point, it would be good to contact me and hopefully we can figure out who is specifically helping to lead the team from your country and make sure that you have not missed any message and that you have all the information about how and when and where that group will be meeting to share ideas and to begin the work of creating that response.
Thank you, Teresa.
Sure. And hopefully that also answers the question of Apolline. But if not, please tell me. And I would like to ask of those who are here today, maybe by a show of hands, or you could write in the chat box if that is easier. Could I just ask how many have completed the form to join the VNR team from their own country? I see Barnabas, Rita, Ida, Babita. Prasansha, Apolline, Reggie, okay, Cletus and Maria Eugenia, have yet to do it. That's okay. Great. Jane Francis. Okay, George still needs to do it. Caridad. Very good. Okay, so let me just in this moment now to help us in case for those who have not yet completed the form and who are definitely interested in being a part of that team, I'm going to get the link for that form and just put it into the chat box now so that you can maybe even open the window and have it ready to complete as soon as the call is over. Or if you want, I will even let you get away with completing it now during the call because it is such a good opportunity and a really valuable way of participating in this process. And I suspect that the form will only be open for a few more days. So it would be a very good idea to complete it today if you can, but definitely as soon as possible. And may I also ask, with respect to that form, was there anyone that has any questions about the form or who had any difficulty in completing it? Any problem that we might be able to help to resolve? I'm just going to very briefly, because this is such a wonderful opportunity for everyone, I'm just going to briefly show the form on the screen again, just so we are all reminded of what it looks like and what I'm asking of you. So as a reminder, it's here. All of the text is in English, in French, Spanish, Russian, and Arabic. So you have your choice from those languages. And the first section is basically going through contact information and sharing your organization, for which you can put the name of your own congregation or the congregation with which you work. Again, this is talking about geographic scope. So if you work within your country, specifically, you can put subnational. If your congregation is international, you could put regional or global. That is up to you, but that part is not so very important. When it comes to question number 7 about affiliation with NGOs, which is again, major groups and other stakeholders. One that you can put here, you can definitely select NGOs. You may wish to select other groups depending on your personal identity and the work that you do, but definitely at least you can all select NGOs for this question. And if you want, you can select only that and move on. But if you feel that your work has a connection to any of these other groups within society, you can also select those, but definitely you should select NGOs. And then, of course, in question 8, you'll say which country team you would like to join. And I know there is at least one person in this group who has personal experience of 2 countries that are reporting this year. So if that includes you also, and you would like to participate in both of those conversations, I know this form really only lets you select one country at a time, but you can, if you wish, submit the whole form twice. And the first time you do it, pick the first country that you want to be a part of, the country whose team you want to be a part of, and then just submit the whole thing a second time and select the other country. And that way, the organizers who are behind the scenes, they will have your name connected to both country teams, and you should be contacted for both of those conversations if you wish to participate in both. And then this question number 9 is just about kind of the nature of your experience of the country. If you are from the country, if you live there, you work there now, or if you are from there, but now you are somewhere else, or you are not there, but you do work that relates to that place. You can select any of those. And then the next question, number 10, you can kind of select which way you are prepared to participate. And I hope all of you would actually be able to select the first option, which is to say you're ready to actively engage through online meetings and working on the statement. That is the ideal way of participating if you can. But if you can't manage that due to time constraints or other concerns, then there are 2 other ways of following the conversation, which is to say, I'm not really prepared to speak up or really actively engage, but I'm curious about what will be said, and I would like to at least sit and listen in the online meetings. Then you could go for the second option. And then the third is really that you just will be updated by email each time, say, a new version of the statement is created. You would get an access to that text. So in that way, you wouldn't really have a voice in the process, but you would be aware of what the group was deciding to say. And then really the fourth option is if you don't plan to engage, although I think if you are selecting the fourth option, it may not really make sense to submit this form at all. And then in terms of question 11, that is if you have any concerns about personal safety or security, that you might in some way face consequences for being part of this effort. You're invited to share that and to explain it more in the following question. And then the next question is just about your past participation. If you have ever been part of these teams before or done any work in the past to engage with the high-level political forum, you're just invited to share that. You're also able to share any questions that you would hope to raise with the government. And if you plan to participate actively in the team, you don't necessarily need to have all of these questions kind of figured out in the moment that you are submitting this report or this form. But this box, I think, is for those who maybe will not participate actively in the team and just wanted to submit an idea for a question. This box is giving them that opportunity. But because we hope that you will all actively participate in the whole conversation, you will certainly have opportunities throughout that process to generate questions that you think would be good, challenging questions to present to your government. And then finally, you're asked whether you will be attending the forum in person, or whether you're certain you will be, or whether you are waiting on a visa. They're trying to get a sense of who will be physically present, because there will be one person who will deliver the statement on behalf of the group who will actually be in the room. And so this question is designed to help them get a sense of who could potentially be that person who will deliver the statement. So even if you have no plan at all to be coming to New York City, that is not a problem. You are very welcome to be part of this process, and we hope that you will. But that question is only just to help the organizers determine who could potentially be the speaker on behalf of the group. And then that final question is just kind of to give your permission that your response is going to be stored within the private but cloud files. So it will exist online, but in a private folder for the organizers of this effort. So you just have to give permission for it to be stored there at the end, and then just click submit. And that is the form. And I do apologize for those who have already been through it all. If you had to maybe take a nap or find another activity to entertain yourselves for the last couple of minutes. But it is a very, very important part of our preparation process. So I did want to take the time to be sure that everyone has clarity about all of the questions on the form and how to complete it. Are there any questions about the form or about the VNR teams themselves? Okay. It's a request to put the link to the form into the chat box again, so I will do that now. Okay, so the most recent message in the chat box you will see is the link to that form that we were just showing on the screen. And the link is also in the slides from today, so I will share those as well if you want to find it again later. And I will also put it in the body of the text of my follow-up email, because it's so important that we want to be sure everyone can find it very easily. And again, I think that form will probably be open for a couple more days, but I'm not sure if it will really be open even a week from now. So if you are able to complete it today, that will be the best. And if you cannot do it today, then please try to find time in the next couple of days. Okay, not seeing any more hands or questions in relation to the VNR teams. So we will go ahead to the next part of our session. So our next topic is to ask if we have anyone from the Asia Pacific region who was able to follow any part of the Asia Pacific Regional Forum for Sustainable Development, which has just happened at the end of February. And there will be fora of the same kind for each of the other global regions, which I will share on the screen in a moment. But the only one that has happened thus far is the forum for the Asia Pacific region. And so I wanted to offer a time and space for the sharing of any experience or reflections that any of you from the Asia Pacific region may have had, if you were able to follow any of the forum, which was live streamed on YouTube. And some of the guiding questions that we offered to help guide your experience and your reflection were to ask yourself, when you're in this forum, where does my experience align or agree with the reports and the perspectives that are being shared? Where does my experience conflict or disagree with the reports and the perspectives that are being shared? And finally, what is missing from this conversation? What additional insights or recommendations would I bring if I was in the room and participating in this conversation? Or another way of thinking of this question is, what are the gaps? What are we failing to talk about that is very important? So with that in mind, I want to ask all of our colleagues here who are coming from the Asia Pacific region, was anyone able to follow any of the forum's proceedings online? And if so, is there anything you would like to share from that experience? I do not see any hands. That is okay, because a little sneak preview of our next call together is that we will be inviting all of you to share your thoughts or your feedback from the experiences of your respective regional fora. And so there will be another opportunity for those from the Asia Pacific region to share their reflections alongside those of you from all other regions. And I just want to remind you, I will bring it up onto the screen again, the dates for all of the regional fora, for those that have not already occurred. Further down. Pardon my scrolling through the slides. I wanted to jump to share this with you. So as a reminder, the dates for the other regional fora that are coming up this month, the Forum for Latin America and the Caribbean actually begins today and will continue through the 4th of April. And then the Forum for Europe and North America begins just later this week on Wednesday, will be the 2nd and the 3rd of April. And the Forum for Africa will be starting on the 6th of April and continuing through the 11th. And then there's also a separate forum for Western Asia or the Arab region. and that will happen in the middle of the month, the 14th to the 16th of April. As you can see, for each of these, we have provided links to specific websites or YouTube channels, or in some cases, it's actually a link to the official UN web TV platform where many UN meetings are live streamed. And so for each of those, you have a way to follow what is happening at the forum from wherever you are. We do not expect that you would be at the forum in person. For many of you, that would be quite a long journey from wherever you are. That is far too big of an expense and a time commitment. But if you are able to listen in on even a couple of events or a couple of sessions from the forum for your region, you can, again, use those same reflection questions to help guide you in kind of processing or integrating the information that you are hearing and in developing your own response to it. And so again, asking yourself, what do I agree with here that I'm hearing? What do I disagree with? And what is missing? What are the gaps in what is being said? So just always keep those 3 questions in mind in any session that you might have the chance to attend as part of the forum from your region. And yes, I will be sharing all of these slides again. So you will have this in your email boxes after our call today. I will send that. So you will have all of these links to join whatever platform is sharing your regional forum. Okay, so let me go back to where we were for a moment. Okay. So that was all of the different activities that we wanted to check in on today in terms of things, activities or tasks that you all have been attempting for the last several weeks. And now I would like to introduce another activity that you might undertake as part of your preparations, which is as you participate in the regional forum for your region, you may also be interested in hearing or reading what other members of civil society from your country have submitted to a past HLPF, when your country reported or presented a voluntary national review in the past. And I will note that not every country has submitted something in the past, but at this point, most of them are making at least their second report. And so that means that in most cases, there is also a past report or past statement from civil society that you are able to study and learn from and see what your colleagues who are also outside of the government have been saying and critiquing. And so there are a couple different places that you can find that input from civil society. And so the first is that I have another directory for you with many links and of course organized country by country. And so I will be sharing this with all of you so you can follow these links directly to reports from civil society in your own country. And you can see that I also indicate there what year each report was created. So if you do not have time, if maybe your country has, some of them have even 4 or 5 reports in the past. If you do not have time to get into all of that, maybe you're just interested in the most recent report. So you have the year there. in order to know which ones are newer and which ones are older. So just showing you that we have gathered those reports from all the countries that are reporting. And another place that you may be interested to go if you have a very small amount of time to dedicate to this, if you want the shortest possible report from civil society, then you actually can get access to the past VNR report or response from civil society in your country. So when we were just speaking a few minutes ago about joining the VNR team, and that team will craft a 2-minute response that will be presented to government during the forum. So there is a database of those 2-minute responses, and it is offered by the major groups and other stakeholders. And so if you only have time for a very, very short, to read a very short input from civil society, you can find a 2-minute report if you go to this database. And so I have the link to it here. And I just wanted to show you with these visuals that this is what the page looks like when you arrive. And you can see there's a list below that is organized by, it shows what country the report is about, the year that the report was made, and then there is a column over here that says link. And so everywhere you see the word read, that is a link to open the written version of the statement or report. And so if you want a quick way to find the report from your own country, you can just use this search box and type in the name of your country there. And I think it is required that you type the name of the country in English. So if your country is commonly translated into, has an English version, you should type in that version to the box, because that is the way that the database is organized. And then I used here as an example, I typed in India. And so there's one past report, one past presentation from India, which was in the year 2020. And so to read that statement, that 2-minute statement from civil society, I would just click on this button here, which says read. And that would open the written version of the statement. Oh, and thanks to Beth, she has put that link to this page directly into the chat box. So if you want to open that now and keep it available for yourself, you can go ahead and visit that page immediately. And again, in reviewing the report from civil society from your country, we return to these same reflection questions that may help us to organize our thoughts, which is, again, where does your experience align with what you are hearing? Where does it agree? Where does it disagree or conflict with what you are reading in the report or the statement? And what is missing from the report or statement? And begin to gather your thoughts on those points. And you will, I think, start to develop an idea of some of the important critiques or questions that you will want to bring to the conversation with your own VNR team this year. All right. Yes, I see the hand of Cesar. Cesar, por favor.
Sorry, I got a bit lost in the previous page. What was it for? Because I just opened it and I see a comment of a Guatemalan person. So I need to know what is the purpose of this web page that you just showed.
Sure. So this database is the collection of the written version of the statements that were delivered live in previous years of the HLPF. So in the case of the statement that you have seen from Guatemala, that was the result of the work of the VNR team from Guatemala in whatever year that would have been. I'm not sure what year they last reported. Okay. So from 2021.
2021.
That was the report that civil society delivered in 2021. That was their 2-minute statement that they delivered during the forum. And so that would have been the work of whoever came together in the same way that we are inviting you to join the VNR country team for your country this year. That statement was constructed by the group of people who came together as the VNR team from Guatemala in 2021. And so this database has those statements from all of the reports or the statements that were made by civil society in the past years of the forum. Does that clarify things for you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. My pleasure. Are there any other questions about finding a report from civil society from past years? Okay, very good. Then I will say that one of the best reasons to read these civil society reports from the past is that they help us to, first of all, we may learn things that are new to us from other members of the civil society community in our own country. Another is that they may help us to organize our own thoughts, to remind us of something really important that we want to emphasize in this year's forum. Because we can recognize, this isn't a new problem. Civil society has been saying this for years and years and years, and we can emphasize that this problem is a long-term problem and that government has been asked to address it, and it still has not been addressed. So having that kind of perspective of the history of the process can be helpful. And then another thing is also to help you craft your own ideas about how you might like to contribute to the events that we will be sponsoring, which we call the SDG Lab at the end of July, in which you each will have the opportunity to kind of present your own reflections on the way in which a particular SDG is being implemented in your own country. And you can select any of the 5 SDGs that are the focus for this year and participate in that session to share reflections like, this SDG is being implemented very well and we see it, in this way. Or here are the ways that this SDG is not being achieved, or these are groups of people who are not receiving or seeing the achievement of this SDG. Or you might also make a presentation about a good practice or a project or a ministry of your congregation in the country that helps to contribute to the achievement of that SDG. And with regard to the question of Jane Francis about, are these reports meant to address a particular SDG or all of them? I think usually the comments of civil society are aimed at a specific SDG, but sometimes they will speak of kind of development as a whole, as a broad concept, but usually in the context of the HLPF, people tend to organize their comments around a particular SDG because it kind of helps to provide a focus in a conversation that can be very broad and can include a huge number of different topics. And so that's just a way of helping to keep the conversation organized. And in the case of reading past reports, some of you may find, particularly in that directory of links that I will send to you, some of them you may find are very, very long reports from civil society. And so if you are interested in kind of a detailed study, but you're not interested in reading a report that is 50 or more pages, that is very understandable. And what you might like to do is to find a particular section of the report that is focused on an SDG that is also a focus or a passion of yours, and just study that section of the report. Because there's certainly no need to read the entirety of a very long report in order to gain more information or in order to have a meaningful engagement with the process. So if you find that any of the reports from your own country are quite long and maybe they're overwhelming, do not worry. Just choose a particular section to focus on and let that be the subject of your study and your reflection. And don't worry that there is more to the report. Sí, por favor.
I have a question, Teresa. For example, now we have a new government in Guatemala, and probably their ENV will refer just to what they have done, which is very recent. So we have the sensation that it's not going to approach what happened in previous years. I participated 2 years ago, and my experience is that governments tend to go to the HLPF to hug each other and say how good they are and how good they're doing. So what is a piece of advice that you could give us on how to approach the reports, these reports that the governments are going to present? Because the report from Guatemala is going to refer to just 1 year of government. They are presenting results after 1 year and 3 months. That's my question.
Yes, very good question, Cesar. Thank you. So you are absolutely correct that it is common practice for the report from government to give the impression that everything is wonderful and all of the SDGs are nearly achieved. That is very common practice, unfortunately. And as we were discussing in our last call together, it's the reason that we need to participate is because that kind of, well, sometimes it's a completely false narrative to say things are wonderful. And sometimes it's just an incomplete narrative to say that things are wonderful. Sometimes things are good in some places for some people, but they are certainly not good everywhere for all people. And that is true in pretty much any country. So it's our job to really focus on the parts of the story that are not being told. And so I think when we consider how we want to create a response as civil society, it is important to emphasize those points, especially the gaps, especially the things that are not being said elsewhere. And in terms of the challenge of the situation of Guatemala, in which the government is kind of new, and so they are probably not wanting to take responsibility for anything that happened more than 1 year ago, or not to even address it. I think as civil society, we still have the freedom to speak in the long term, both historically and into the future. Because our experience is in the whole, our experience did not begin with a new government. And certainly the new government inherited many challenges and probably some gifts from the previous government. So they were not, arriving at a brand new country and building it from there. And so I think any critique that we want to present, we still have space to present it, even if we are including observations that come from before the start of this government's term. And maybe one helpful way of approaching that is to say, in the previous government's administration or regime, we experienced A, B, and C. And we would like to know what you have already started doing to address those concerns and what you plan to do in the remainder of your term as government or as leader, how you will continue to address those challenges or those realities, because we have not seen a resolution yet. And we are waiting, and we are eager to see how you will respond, perhaps in a way that is different from the previous government. And in that way, to kind of invite the new government to be better than the previous one in terms of addressing your concerns, and still reminding them that the problems or the challenges that they inherited are still real. And even if they were not the ones who created the challenge, and they're not so responsible for creating the challenge, it still belongs to them. It's still their responsibility to address it. And it's very fair for us to continue to raise that challenge. So that is how I would suggest approaching that. We are each one of us is one country with one long story, and different leaders will take turns, in the driver's seat, or in leadership. But we're all, together in one continuous project, and we should not have to kind of start again from zero with each new government. I hope that provides some clarity, some help.
Excellent. Thank you, Teresa.
Yes, Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. I know in the past years, you also provided us with the link of the reports DNR of civil society. Do we still have that? Or probably it's in the PowerPoint. I didn't check the PowerPoint, but I think it would be helpful also for us to look at also the VNRs of civil society.
Yes, so those are in the slides that I showed just before this. The links there are the the VNRs from civil society, which are they have different names. Some networks will call them a shadow report. Some networks will call them a parallel report. But no matter what name they use, we've tried to kind of collect them country by country. So I have direct links to all of those past reports. So in addition to the short statements that you can find on that webpage that we just showed you, we also have those direct links to the longer reports from civil society. And so we will circulate all of that with these slides from today.
Yeah, thank you. And it's also helpful that you mentioned that because the reports are like for India, the VNR of India is 180 plus pages. And now I'm looking at the VNR of civil society in India, it's even more, 200 plus pages. So it's helpful that you mentioned that we can just concentrate on a specific area or expertise or our major concern in the country. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And to that, I say good for the people of India that seems they took even more care to report more thoroughly than the government did. So good for them.
And the grassroots, it's very specific, but they address that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Melba.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I was listening to your tips to analyze those documents. I see there are online reports from people that are already commenting on the VNR. That helped me last year. There are people from the civil society that are making comments in different websites. And of course, we need to take care because some of those reports, some of those commentators might be manipulated by private businesses or by the government, or especially in Central America. If we talk about El Salvador, there are alternatives. For example, the ERIC group in Honduras analyzes those reports very frequently. They offer a follow-up report relatively frequently. Then there is the Progress radio station that is also offering some analysis. In El Salvador, there is another group, Grupo Meridiano, something like that. And of course, maybe the JPIC groups in different countries might be offering an analysis as well. So I would invite you to use these other tools as well, but always following those 3 questions. What does align with my experience, what doesn't, and what is missing, especially what is missing. Because sometimes when I listen to reports, I have the feeling that everything is wonderful and marvelous, and it is not true. And that's it.
Excellent. Thank you for that additional guidance, Melba. You have great experience to add, especially from the region of Central America. Not see any other questions or comments. So I will move us to just the last piece of input for today. It's a very brief one. Which is really just an invitation to begin to think about the events that we are slowly building toward that will happen all the way at the end of the month of July. And again, as kind of a culmination, or some would call it like a capstone to your participation in this program and also to your participation in the HLPF itself. You will be invited to contribute to these events that I keep mentioning that we call the JCoR SDG Lab. And again, if you don't remember this from our previous conversations, the lab consists of a collection, a series of 5 webinars or 5 online sessions that will happen one right after the other in 5 days at the end of July. And each session will focus on one of the SDGs that has been selected as a priority or as a focus for this year's forum. And so again, to remind you, those 5 SDGs are goal number 3, which is quality healthcare and well-being for all. Goal number 5, which is gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. Goal number 8, which is provision of opportunity for decent work and sustainable economies. Goal number 14, which is to promote healthy aquatic ecosystems, so healthy life in our lakes and rivers and oceans. And finally, goal number 17, which is partnerships that help support the whole agenda, all of sustainable development. So we will have one session for each of those goals in our week at the end of July. And you all are invited to be speakers or panelists during those sessions. So you will get to select which of those SDGs you would like to speak about in relation to your own country. And you have a lot of time to begin to prepare and to think about which one you might like to contribute to and what you might like to say. But I just wanted to continue to remind you that we are building toward these events so that you can kind of enjoy a nice, slow process of thought and reflection and discernment about which area you might like to speak in. And I will say that sometimes people wish to speak about more than one of the goals, and so to be a speaker in more than one session, and that is also possible. So if you are feeling passionate about 2 of these subjects and you would really like to speak about both, that is a possibility for you. And so really, I only raise this now, not to have you worried about the details of the presentation, but just to invite you to kind of begin to reflect and think about what area you are feeling most called to speak to. And if you have already sort of figured out which one is most interesting and compelling to you, then maybe you might also like to start to think about specific observations that you would like to share, or perhaps if there is a ministry project in your country that is very closely tied to that SDG, you might like to start to think about what project you could potentially speak about. And if it's something that you're personally very involved in, maybe you also have photographs or images of some kind that you would like to include as you are sharing that project with others. So again, just to introduce the idea and to have you to begin to think about what area you might like to speak to. And in our remaining calls for the rest of the program, we will introduce and speak more and more detail about kind of the structure and the format of these sessions and how much time each person will have to speak and all of that technical detail. But for now, I just wanted to remind you all that we are building toward this activity at the end, and just to remind you to keep it in your mind as you are joining the first conversations with the VNR country team, as you are sitting in on some of those meetings from your regional forum and listening to what others are saying, or as you are reading reports from civil society networks in your country. Just keep this question in the back of your mind of, where do I feel most called to speak and to contribute, and kind of take your time in arriving at that decision. And so a quick overview of what comes next between now and our next call on May 5th is that if you have not already done so, or attempt to make contact with the National Civil Society Network that's monitoring SDG progress in your country. And for those who have already attempted and have encountered some difficulties, let us be in touch by email or by WhatsApp, and see if we can continue to find new creative approaches, and hopefully we will be able to make successful contact with one in your country. And then finally, that all-important, not finally, second, that all-important link that we shared earlier to that form to join the VNR team for your country. I've put that in the slides a couple places, so here it is again on your to-do list. And again, please do that today if it's possible, but if it's not, to just as soon as you can. And again, as that last point, begin kind of gathering ideas or images that you might like to use when you offer your contribution to the SDG Lab in July. And of course, for those of you who are not in the Asia Pacific region, remember that your regional fora are happening this month. For those in Latin America, it's starting today. So please try to tune in to the live streamed events from those, even 1 or 2 events, just to learn what people are saying in your region, and maybe to pick up on some interesting new ideas, because the majority of our conversation in May will be to share your experiences and your reflections from these fora. So in order for us to have a nice, rich conversation in May, it's really important that each of you is able to tune into at least an event or 2. And for the most part, even if you cannot attend them live, you're able to watch the videos again later. So please explore those opportunities. And again, the same is true for those from the Asia Pacific region. Even though your forum has already concluded, you can find those events on the YouTube page, I believe it is, of your regional forum. And so there's a way to go back and find those events afterward. And finally, the last thing, as always, is to register for our next call, which will be at the same time as today on the 5th of May. And as usual, I will circulate all of these slides with all of their links in the email that will come after this call. And I will circulate them in English and Spanish and Portuguese, so they can be more useful references for all of us. Thank you for the team effort of, I see you have asked questions and you've already answered them yourselves, which is so lovely. So thank you for that team effort in the chat box. I appreciate that. The question, if anyone did not see, the question asked in the chat box was exactly what dates will the SDG Lab be? And so the answer is that will be from the 28th of July through the 1st of August. And we will go in order. So SDG 3 will be the first day, the 28th of July, and then the following day we'll have SDG 5, then SDG 8, then SDG 14, and finally SDG 17. So that will be on the 1st of August. But thanks everybody for being such a good community and helping each other out there. Are there any final thoughts or questions that anyone wants to raise?
Thank you very much, Teresa, for all that you have put us through. I wasn't able to connect with any civil society. So if you could please send the civil society again to my email so that I begin to check them out. Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely, Julie. I will include in these slides, you will have the links to all of the civil society networks. Again, you will have links to the reports that have been submitted in the past by civil society networks. And you'll also have the link to that database of the very short 2-minute statements that were delivered in the past from each country. So quite a few collections, but we will try to make sure everyone has all of the resources that they might need.
Okay, thank you, Teresa.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so that is the one, that was the Asia Pacific. So that one already occurred, but the recordings are available. So I will make sure that the links to those pages are also there in the slides, so you can find the recording. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see any more questions for the moment. So I will get to work in putting together all of those slides in all of the languages. And I will have those to you as soon as I can. And then we will continue with our shared work of making contact with civil society networks, of attending sessions of our respective regional fora on sustainable development, and our new assignment or our new task of looking into past reports that were submitted by civil society from our respective countries. So much to do between now and our next call in May. But I really thank you all for your ongoing participation and your dedication to completing these tasks as much as is in your power. And as several of you shared at the beginning, there are obstacles to making these connections in our countries, and the way that organic networks come together means that sometimes they also organically dissipate. And so it's often difficult to know who is leading or where the center of activity is from year to year. So it takes quite a bit of attention and sometimes a significant amount of research and persistence. So I thank you all for the efforts you have made already, and that you have pledged to continue to make. And I hope that I can be helpful to you in the process. So please be in touch with me if you think that there may be any assistance that I can offer. All right. Thank you all so much for your time today, and I will see you all again on the 5th of May. And in the meantime, have a very wonderful Triduum and Easter, and we will look forward to being together again in the Easter season.
Saludos, Teresa. Adiós.
Obrigado, obrigado.
Thank you, Teresa.
Hello, bye
Dia 5 de
everyone.
maio, então. Obrigado.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Thank you, Teresa. God bless you and everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Okot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey,
Yeah. Thank
muchas
you for all.
gracias.
Obrigado.
Cuídense.
Ohang. Melba,
Thank you.
saludos.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Good.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
Thank you. Saludos.
Saludos.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you,
Thank
Teresa.
you. It was a very good engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.